The sun over Zarion 5 burned red and low, casting long shadows across the sand. The air was dry, the wind constant, carrying fine grains that clung to every surface. Captain Alex Voss stood at the edge of a deep excavation pit, staring down at what the team had uncovered. It was not a rock or ruin like the others found in this desert. It was smooth, metallic, and curved, too precise to be natural. Half buried beneath the sand, the surface reflected the light like a dark mirror. "It's not part of the ruins," Voss said, speaking into his calm. "This is something else, something sealed, possibly a ship." Beside him, Dr. Nira Tom, a xenolinguist, adjusted her visor. "It matches nothing in our database. No known species. The metal isn't corroded. Could be thousands of years old, or millions." Voss nodded. His gut told him this wasn't just another relic. This was important. He turned and looked toward the horizon, where the tall spires of the council hall rose above the dunes. The leaders of Zarion 5 were already aware of the find. A meeting had been called. Voss was expected to present his findings. Hours later, he stood inside the high-domed council chamber. The circular room was filled with representatives of different species, some with scaled skin, others with glowing eyes or mechanical limbs. At the center sat Chancellor Kurox, tall and thin, with grayish-blue skin and a voice like grinding stone. "You bring us here over a buried canister of scrap," Kurox said, raising an eyebrow. "Your report calls it a ship, but what threat could a relic pose? It hasn't moved in 1,000 years. Voss kept his voice calm. "We don't know what it is, Chancellor. But the readings are clear. There's a faint power signature. It's not dead, just dormant." A few council members exchanged nervous glances. Others chuckled. Kurox leaned back in his seat. "Captain, Zarion 5 has ancient machines buried everywhere. Most of them are harmless, decorative. Your human obsession with old wars has no place here." Voss clenched his jaw. "With respect, Chancellor, I've seen tech like this before, once on Aeron 6. A similar structure activated on its own. It wiped out an entire colony before we shut it down." "And did that one also look like a ship?" Kurox mocked, tapping on his desk. "Perhaps all your ancient stories are blending together." The room filled with quiet laughter. Voss didn't respond. He turned off the holomap he had been showing and stepped back. Outside, the wind had picked up. A storm was coming, but Voss barely noticed. His mind was still on the ship, or whatever it was, half buried in the sand. Later that night, the excavation site was quiet. Most workers had gone. Only 2 drones hovered, scanning the structure. Then, without warning, the ground trembled slightly. A soft hum filled the air. The drones froze. From deep inside the metallic surface, a pulse of light blinked once, then twice. Far away in the council chamber, the lights flickered for less than a second. Captain Voss didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Captain Alex Voss was already back at the dig site, before the twin moons had fully vanished from the sky. The sand was still cool under his boots, but his mind was racing. The strange pulse he'd seen the night before, it hadn't been a glitch. Something inside the structure had awakened. He walked down into the pit where the dark metal hull curved out of the ground like the side of a buried whale. His fingers traced a series of grooves in the surface. They weren't just random lines, they were symbols etched deeply, aged and worn, but clearly artificial. "Nira," he called over the comm, "bring your tablet. I think these markings are a form of language." Minutes later, Dr. Nira Tom arrived, eyes wide behind her visor. She crouched beside the markings and began scanning. Her screen filled with symbols, matching them to known dialects. "This is strange," she murmured. "Some of the roots are familiar, similar to old Acrinian script, but the grammar's wrong. It's like it was written by something that learned language differently. Maybe even something not native to this galaxy." Voss frowned. "Can you translate anything?" She hesitated. "One phrase repeats near the surface. Sentry vessel, class Theta, secure clearance protocols." She paused. "There's another word that shows up a lot. Cleansing." That word hit Voss like a slap. He opened his comm again. "Send a full report to the council. Tag it as urgent. Back in the council chamber, Voss stood before the leaders once again. A projection of the strange symbols hovered in the air behind him, alongside the translated phrases. He kept his voice steady, but firm. This isn't a monument. This is a warship, a sentry vessel built for planetary defense or offense, and it's still alive. Something triggered a startup sequence last night. Chancellor Kurok sighed loudly. You're reading too much into a few old words. We've seen plenty of ancient weapons. They're broken, powerless, dust. This one isn't, Voss replied. It's emitting energy. The pulses are growing stronger. There are systems inside that are waking up. And if that word cleansing means what I think it means, this thing may consider every life form here a threat. Kurox leaned forward, his blue-gray fingers tapping the table. Even if it was a weapon, it's buried and broken. You're proposing a panic over lights and symbols. Voss narrowed his eyes. I'm proposing a controlled lockdown. Quarantine the site. Send engineers. Study it before it does something we can't undo. Laughter rippled through part of the chamber. One of the reptilian delegates whispered something in his native tongue, and others chuckled in agreement. Kurox shook his head. You humans are always afraid of ghosts. With that, the meeting was dismissed. That evening, Voss sat alone near the excavation site, staring at the half-buried ship. The wind had picked up again. Sand danced across the hull like tiny sparks. Suddenly, a sharp chirp rang out from his scanner. Power spike detected. Voss looked up. A soft glow now traced along the edges of the ship. The symbols that had been dull and aged were now pulsing slowly, one after another, like the heartbeat of a machine coming alive. Then came the sound, low, deep, like the groan of metal shifting after centuries of silence. He tapped his comm. Base, this is Voss. We have movement. At that moment, one of the drones monitoring the ship buzzed erratically and crashed to the ground. The second one followed seconds later, its circuits fried. Voss stood still, eyes fixed on the ancient vessel. Something had changed. Something had begun, and no one was listening. By the next sunrise, strange things were happening across Zarion 5. Power grids flickered. Communication signals dropped for minutes at a time. Navigation systems on nearby ships reset without warning. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the air, too soft for most to notice, but constant. Captain Alex Voss stood at the edge of the excavation pit, eyes locked on the ancient ship. The glow along its hull had grown stronger overnight. What was once cold and lifeless now pulsed with energy. The buried metal was warm to the touch. Beside him, Dr. Nira Tom reviewed her data, her fingers moving quickly over the tablet. The energy field around the ship has increased by 40% in the last 6 hours, she said. It's forming some kind of barrier, like a shield. Voss nodded. It's not just waking up, it's protecting itself. They had sent multiple messages to the council. No one responded. Just then the ground shook slightly. A soft rumble echoed from beneath the sand. Voss grabbed the edge of a metal support beam to steady himself. From the center of the ship's hull a panel slowly slid open. A small spherical device rose out of the ship. It hovered a meter above the surface, rotating slowly. It had no visible weapons, no moving parts, just a dull red eye glowing at its center. What is that? Nira whispered. Before Voss could answer, the sphere emitted a sharp pulse. One of the nearby excavation bots sparked, froze, then exploded in a shower of smoke and debris. The sphere turned toward the next drone. Voss didn't wait. Fall back, he shouted. Now, workers scrambled away from the pit as the sphere released a second pulse. The remaining drone was struck midair and crashed into the sand. The red eye turned to Voss and Nira. Run! Voss pulled her back just as a beam of light passed over the spot where they had stood. It didn't explode this time. It scanned. The ship wasn't just defending itself. It was identifying threats. Later, Voss sat in the emergency outpost just beyond the dig site, a thin cut on his forehead and sand still in his boots. He had replayed the scene over and over in his mind. The symbols, the sphere, the heat rising from the ship, it all pointed to one thing. This was not just a relic. It was a sentry vessel, just as the carvings had said. And now it was active. A message arrived on his comm at last. Chancellor Korox's face appeared, looking annoyed. "You've caused unnecessary panic," Korox said. "The Council believes the event at the site was a technical failure. Drones malfunction. Sensors fail. There is no evidence of a threat." "No evidence." Voss stood up, his voice sharp. "We were nearly killed by an autonomous defense drone. The ship is activating protocols. It's targeting everything nearby." Korox narrowed his eyes. "We will send a technician. No need for dramatic claims." The screen went dark. Voss clenched his fists. He won't believe it until the whole colony is burning. Dr. Nira looked up from her tablet. "Maybe we don't have that long. There's another message coming from the ship. I'm still translating, but the structure is repeating 3 words now. What are they?" Nira hesitated. Then she read aloud. "Scan. Identify. Purge." Voss stared at her, then turned back to the glowing ship. It had begun its process, and no one was ready. Captain Alex Voss moved quickly through the excavation site, now locked down and surrounded by temporary force field barriers. The Council had finally agreed to send a technician, but too little, too late. Voss had stopped waiting for orders. He had a new plan. He stood with a small team of 3: Dr. Nira Tom, Lieutenant Dylan Reeve, and a silent engineer named Joran. They were equipped with scanners, pulse rifles, and portable jammers. Their goal was clear: get inside the ship, find its core, and stop whatever protocol had been triggered. The hatch in the hull, once sealed, now stood open. A soft red light pulsed from within. Voss looked at his team. "No one touches anything unless I say so. We go in, find the source of the activation, and shut it down. Fast and quiet." They entered the ship one by one. Inside, the air was cold and still. The walls were made of smooth black alloy, dimly lit by glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The corridors were narrow, curving upward and inward, forming a spiral design. The ship was alive, its systems humming, its lights watching. Joran scanned the structure. "This isn't built like anything we know. It's almost organic. No dust," Nira added, wiping her glove along the wall. "It's been sealed for centuries, but it's clean, like it was preserved." They reached the first chamber. The door opened on its own, hissing quietly. Inside were what looked like storage pods, tall, narrow capsules sealed with a transparent coating. Most were empty. One was cracked open. Voss stepped closer. Inside the cracked pod were remains, skeletal, elongated, not human. The creature had 6 fingers, armor fused to its chest, and a strange symbol etched into its skull. The same symbol they had seen outside the Theta Mark. "This ship was manned," Nira whispered. "Whoever they were, they designed it to survive without them." Suddenly the lights flickered. The floor beneath them vibrated. A voice echoed through the corridor, not in any known language, but deep, harsh, and repeated. The translation program clicked in. "Intruder detected. Identify. Intruder detected. Purge in progress." "Move," Voss said. "We're running out of time." They ran down a sloped hallway, turning corners that shifted shape behind them. The ship was reconfiguring its interior, trapping them. "Joran," Voss shouted. "Use the jammer." Joran threw a jammer sphere. It clamped to the wall and released a pulse. The walls stopped moving, freezing in mid-shift. "Not for long," Joran said. "It'll hold maybe 10 minutes." They reached the core chamber. The doors slid open to reveal a massive room filled with light. In the center hovered a rotating structure of black stone and glowing metal, shaped like a floating heart. Lines of energy pulsed outward from it, powering the entire vessel. Around the room, holograms displayed scans of the planet, cities, bases, ships. Target markers flashed red over each one. Nira gasped. "It's scanning all life on Zerion 5, and preparing to purge it," Voss added. He stepped toward the core. "We need to shut it down. There has to be a manual override." But before he could move closer, another defense sphere dropped from the ceiling. This one was larger than the ones outside. It locked on immediately. "Cover me," Voss shouted, diving behind a console. Dalen fired his pulse rifle. The beams bounced off the sphere's shield. It retaliated with a shockwave, sending Dalen flying across the room. Joran rushed forward with a second jammer. He threw it, and the pulse struck the drone directly. Its shield collapsed, and a second blast from Dalen's rifle brought it down. "Go," Nira yelled. "Now." Voss rushed to the core. He placed both hands on the glowing control ring. The symbols responded to his touch, scrolling faster. A message appeared. "Clearance denied. Genetic mismatch." He cursed. "It's locked to the creators." But Nira stepped forward. "Wait, I found something in the translations. There's a backdoor code. Something the creators used for emergency shutdowns." She entered a sequence into her tablet and linked it to the interface. The core glowed brighter, then stopped. Silence. The light faded. The hum disappeared. The ship powered down. All around them, the scans blinked out. The target markers vanished. It was over, at least for now. Voss stepped back, breathing hard. "We shut it down, but not destroyed," Nira said quietly. "It's still intact, still waiting." Voss nodded. "Then we better tell the Council the truth they refuse to hear." Captain Alex Voss stood before the Council once more, but this time he wasn't asking for permission. He was delivering a warning. Behind him, holograms displayed everything. The scans, the activation logs, the shutdown sequence, and the images of the alien core pulsing with energy. The data was clear. The ship was a sentry vessel, built to wipe out anything it did not recognize. It had nearly done so. The chamber was silent. The alien leaders sat in their high-backed seats, no longer smug or dismissive. Some looked uneasy, others confused. Only one looked angry. Chancellor Kurox. "You disobeyed a direct order," Kurox said coldly. "You entered a dangerous site without Council approval." "I did," Voss replied calmly, "because waiting for your approval would have meant this planet's destruction. That ship was seconds away from activating a purge sequence. We stopped it, barely." Kurox stood. His voice rose. "You endangered lives. You brought panic to the public. And now you demand we believe your ancient warships nearly wiped us out." Voss didn't flinch. He tapped a button on his wrist device, and a hologram filled the room, a red blinking scan of Zerion 5, with dozens of targets marked. "This was the ship's purge map," Voss said. "It scanned the colony, identified life forms and tagged them for elimination. Dozens of settlements, military bases, even council headquarters." Gasps filled the chamber. A few members stood from their seats. Kurox's voice dropped, but his eyes burned. "You faked this." "No." Nira spoke up, stepping forward. "I decoded the language myself. It fits with other lost texts from the Outer Rim. This ship isn't a relic. It's a warning left by a race long gone. A race that believed in total defense through total destruction." Kurox's mouth tightened. "And now it's shut down." "Yes," Voss said. "But only temporarily. The systems are dormant, not destroyed. And we don't know what else it's capable of." Another delegate, a tall, three-eyed alien named Mavax, spoke up. "Why would they build such a thing? Why leave it buried on this world?" Voss looked at him. "We don't know. Maybe this planet was a battlefield once. Maybe the ship was forgotten, or abandoned. But it's here now. And it almost killed us." There was a pause. Then Mavax turned to the others. "The captain is right. We cannot afford to ignore this." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. One by one the council members turned to face Kurox. The chancellor stared at them, his pride wounded. He looked at Voss, eyes sharp and cold. "Very well," Kurox said at last. "The council will authorize a full investigation and containment effort. But you," he pointed at Voss, "are not in command. You are reckless. You disobeyed orders." Voss stepped forward, unshaken. "And I saved your life." Kurox said nothing. The chamber was quiet. Later outside the hall, Voss walked with Nira across the platform overlooking the desert. "Do you think they'll listen now?" she asked. "They'll have to," Voss replied. "Fear gets attention faster than facts." "Still," she said, glancing at the horizon, That ship, it felt like it was more than just a weapon. Like it was. Watching. Voss nodded. I felt it too. It wasn't just defense programming. There was something in there. Something aware. They stopped walking. The wind kicked up sand around their boots. Nira looked at him. You think this is over? No, Voss said. I think this was just the beginning. The alarm sirens began just after midnight. Captain Alex Voss bolted upright from his bunk inside the temporary research camp near the excavation site. Red lights flashed through the windows. His comm unit buzzed with static and broken voices. He tapped into the channel. This is Voss. Report. A panicked voice replied. The ship. It's waking up again. Systems are rebooting. The core's back online. Voss grabbed his gear and ran out the door. The desert night glowed red beneath the stars. The hull of the ancient ship pulsed with light, brighter than before, like a heart racing under stress. Dr. Nira met him at the edge of the pit, eyes wide, tablet in hand. The shutdown code didn't hold. Something inside reversed it. I think it adapted. Voss stared at the ship. It learned. Above them, the same drone that had attacked days earlier emerged from the hull, only now it was larger, reinforced and armed. It hovered silently for a moment, scanning everything below. Then it fired. A nearby transport exploded into flames. Get back, Voss yelled, pulling Nira behind a metal support post. Debris rained down around them. Workers scrambled for cover. More drones were rising, now in groups, 3, 4, 5 at a time. From the ship's surface, loud static blared, then a single repeated phrase echoed across the site in a deep, mechanical voice. Unauthorized presence. Purge in progress. Countdown initiated. Voss's tablet beeped. A new interface had opened. An ancient countdown clock, glowing red. 0 hours 23 minutes and 17 seconds. He turned to Nira. We've got less than 24 minutes before this thing tries to wipe out the entire colony. She didn't hesitate. We have to get back to the core. It's the only way to stop it. Inside the ship, the corridors were darker than before, lit only by the glowing red emergency strips along the walls. The ship had changed again. Hallways had shifted. Doorways had sealed. It was more aggressive now. Defensive. Lieutenant Dallin Reeve and Engineer Joran joined them at the entrance. I've set up pulse charges on the drones, Dallin said. It'll buy you time, but not much. Make it count, Voss said. We're going to the core. They moved fast, dodging sparks and collapsing panels. The air felt thick, humming with power. The countdown echoed in their ears, ticking steadily. 0 hours 15 minutes and 42 seconds. They reached the core chamber. It was fully lit now, humming louder than before. The floating engine spun rapidly, throwing sparks into the air. The holograms around it showed the entire planet, marked with blinking red targets. The AI spoke again. Purge confirmed. Preparing surface sterilization. Voss stepped up to the console. We need a shutdown code. We don't have one, Nira said, hands flying over her tablet. But maybe we don't need to shut it down. What if we convince it we're not a threat? What are you talking about? Earlier, she said, it scanned us, it rejected us. But what if we feed it data, show it we're not enemies? Voss looked at her, then at the spinning core. How? Upload our genetic data, diplomatic archives, historical records. Anything that shows intelligence, peace, life. If we can flood the system with enough proof, maybe it'll stand down. Voss hesitated, then he nodded. Do it. Nira connected her device. The screens flickered. Files began to transfer. 0 hours 6 minutes and 29 seconds. One of the drones burst into the room. Dallin fired. Sparks flew. Another drone followed. Joran jumped in front of Nira, taking a blast to the chest before collapsing. Dallin took down the second drone with a final pulse shot. Keep uploading, Voss yelled. The core began to flash yellow. Processing. It was hesitating. 0 hours 2 minutes and 41 seconds. The AI voice shifted tone, slower, less robotic. Reviewing input. Identity inconsistent. Behavior non-hostile. 0 hours 1 minute and 13 seconds. Nira screamed, "It's working." Then all at once, the ship went quiet. The spinning core slowed. The lights dimmed. The countdown stopped. 0 hours 0 minutes and 3 seconds. The holograms faded. The targets vanished. Silence. The only sound was heavy breathing, and the crackle of cooling systems shutting down. Voss lowered his weapon. It stood down. Nira slumped to the floor, exhausted. We convinced it. It saw us as life worth sparing. They looked at Joran's body, lying still by the console. He had given his life for a few more seconds, and those seconds had saved millions. Outside, the red glow faded from the ship's hull. The drones dropped lifeless into the sand. The storm had passed. Voss looked out across the desert, his face hard with resolve. "It understood us this time," he said quietly, "but it's still here, and now it knows us." Morning broke slowly over Zarion 5. The red sun climbed the horizon, casting long shadows over the silent excavation site. The ancient ship, once glowing and dangerous, now sat quiet and dark. No lights, no hum, no movement, as if it had returned to sleep. Captain Alex Voss stood on a rise, looking down at it. A cold breeze carried sand across the hull, slowly beginning to bury it again. Behind him, the council shuttle landed with a soft hiss. The ramp opened, and Chancellor Karak stepped out, followed by several high-ranking officials. Their expressions were serious, their pride replaced with concern. Karak approached Voss. "We received your final report," he said. "No one expected this outcome." "I did," Voss said simply. Karak said nothing for a moment. He looked at the ship. "You shut it down." "Again." "We convinced it," Voss said. "That we were not a threat. That we didn't deserve to be purged. It chose to stand down. But it wasn't mercy. It was logic. It calculated that we were not worth destroying." "And what happens when it calculates something else?" Karak asked. "That's why you don't bury this," Voss said. "You study it, you guard it, you respect it, and most of all you don't underestimate it." Dr. Niratam joined them. Her arm bandaged from the night before, she handed Karak a data crystal. "These are the full logs," she said. "Language, AI behavior. Everything it scanned and how it changed its protocol. It learns. That's the most dangerous part." Karak took the crystal and looked at both of them. "You saved this colony." Voss nodded. "At a cost. Joran gave his life to buy us seconds. And there's no guarantee we won't face something like this again." The Chancellor's voice softened. "What do you propose?" "We seal it," Voss said. "Surround it with force fields. Station guards. No experiments without oversight. No digging without backup. This isn't just a ship, it's a warning from the past. The kind we can't afford to ignore." Karak gave a slow nod. "You'll oversee it." Voss blinked. "You're the only one who treated this threat seriously from the beginning," Karak said. "You'll lead the new team. Study it, contain it, learn from it." Voss looked back at the ship. For a moment he thought he saw a faint pulse of light under the surface. Then it was gone. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll stay." Weeks later, the site had changed. Barricades were in place. Satellite scans watched the ship day and night. A permanent outpost was built around it. They named it Outpost Theta. Dr. Nira worked with a team of scientists to decode more of the ancient language. Voss trained security personnel and reviewed every protocol. He never let his guard down. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the dunes, Voss sat outside the main station, drinking black tea and staring at the ship. "This time we were lucky," he said to himself. "Next time we won't wait for warnings." He set the mug down and stood. The desert was silent, but beneath the sand, deep within the core of the ancient ship, a single red light blinked, just once, before fading again.